Very good evening to you. I've got one Blade and two Owls on the show tonight. You might think that the Blade is boxed in. Far from it. He's in the box seat because he's the one guy in the studio. That's Kevin Gage. A warm welcome back to Kevin Gage. As ex-players go around Sheffield United, if you want an opinion, the two authorities on the subject are this fella in the Sheffield Star with his weekly column and on this programme, and of course also Keith Edwards on BBC Radio Sheffield. They're the big voices, the big booming voices. They've had a lot to boom about this season. However, there are two quite important football matches coming up, and maybe three as far as this city is concerned. Kevin, any ideas what those could be?
I've got no idea whatsoever, Alan.
Despite the blue pinstripe that you're conveniently wearing tonight?
I thought I'd get away with that. All my red and white ones were in the wash.
Right, well, anyway, here's my attempt at a red one for this evening. Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday in the playoffs. In part one, we'll be hearing from Neil Mellor, currently now on Sky, one of the leading Sky pundits, former Sheffield Wednesday striker, season on loan he had from Preston some years ago and did very well too. And also Nigel Worthington, one of those heroes from the golden days of the late 1980s and early 90s. Nigel Worthington will join us as well during the course of the programme. Both I've spoken to today had some really interesting things to say about Sheffield Wednesday and the playoffs. So do stay tuned for that. But as I say, Kevin Gage, you're in the happy position of reflecting not only on a brilliant season, but looking forward to what could be a pretty brilliant future as well, as far as Sheffield United are concerned.
Well, I hope that definition is right. Yeah, it's an exciting time, isn't it, to be a Sheffield United fan. We finally got out of League One after knocking on the door for umpteen years. And yeah, the whole club seems to be set up perfectly to not only survive in the Championship, but hopefully, find our feet and then take a next step up, which is the promised land of the Premier League. I don't think we're quite ready just yet, but we're certainly going to be working towards it next season and in a couple of seasons to come. Well,
you've radiated all that excitement in your Sheffield Star column, where you've been almost bursting out of the pages with pride, actually, during the course of the season. It's been a wonderful pleasure for you to actually reflect just how much it's all meant.
Yeah. I was delighted to be asked, and it was a bit of a gamble, to be honest, because I work for the club on a match day doing hosting and comparing and things like that. So I am connected to the club. So obviously, if the season hadn't gone particularly brilliantly, there's no way I can just flannel it and say things that weren't true, paint with rose-tinted glasses. I had to kind of tell it like it was. After 3-4 games, I was regretting my decision to write a column every week. I thought, where is this going to end up? But it turned out okay, and Chris got the team together and a few changes, and as they say, the rest is history. We just pushed on and on and on, and some of the football we played, it was an absolute joy to watch. And from my point of view, it was fantastic to be able to write about it in such glowing terms.
Well, we'll look into the future rather than look back, because we all know what we've all said about the season. There's not very much that we can add to it. We'll look at the transfer dealings, what they might need. Chris Wilder's situation, there isn't really a situation apart from the fact that he signed a 3-year contract, which he's still on, which is worth, I'm gauging, I'm sorry about the pun on your name, it's worth, from little noises I hear, perhaps around 200,000 a year, which is way, way short for a Championship manager after what he's done. So we'll talk about that as well. But comparisons with Bassett's Blades, I hear them being made. You were part of Bassett's Blades. Of course, they won promotion in 2 bounces from the 3rd tier to the Premier League. 89, 90 and 90, 91, whereupon you arrived. Can that comparison be made? Is there any comparison to be made?
I think it can be made, because I think Chris and Dave Bassett are similar characters. I think they're all about the group together, the team spirit, the bonding, the squad as a whole. As I say, all in it together. That's on the management side and the way they conduct themselves and get their team to gel together. Now on the football side, I think they're worlds apart, as we've seen this season.
Yeah.
I mean, Dave Bassett's style, I know it well. I had the promotions at Wimbledon with him. It was very rough and ready, and it was up and at 'em, and it was a mile away from some of the football we've played at Sheffield United this season. So I do think there's parallels in them as managers and as people, but the way they want their teams to play, I think they're a long way apart on the evidence I've seen.
It's all about eras as well. That if Dave Bassett was managing as a 40-year-old manager in this era, when the long ball has been and gone as an effective weapon, mostly, he perhaps do it differently as well. Do you not think?
I think yes, he would adapt, because he went to other clubs. He went to Forest and he went to Barnsley, didn't he? And success there, and he was at Palace for a while, and he adapted his style somewhat to suit the teams and the players he had. But and Chris has done that, to be fair, this season, because I don't think it's any secret. But he spoke to myself and Keith and various other ex-players at the Lane and got a feel about the team and the club. And I know he wanted to play 4-4-2, and it was going to be an up and at 'em style. And I thought it would be slightly more direct and forceful. And then perhaps it was in the first few games of the season.
And it didn't work.
It didn't really work, no. So a rethink was needed. New players came in, and we seemed to adapt the style to the players he had available, and they just pushed on and on and on from there.
Yeah, quite brilliant, the football, and that's been the real revelation, because I don't think, as you say, anybody expected silky passing football, all right, at a high tempo of that nature. It's been brilliant to watch. Of course, they had Dean and Agana back then, and I suppose if you have two special strikers of that dynamism, you know, that system's going to work as well from that point of view, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Dean and Agana were the main, obviously the main strike force, and they propelled the team to those promotions. With the lads obviously backing them up, but those two up front were a special unit up front. Yeah. With the best will in the world, I think the lads we've had up front, Billy Sharp's had two tremendous seasons, absolutely tremendous seasons, but he's had a variety of strike partners. So maybe that's one area that's going to be looked at, because we may need a bit more to propel us to the Premiership, if that's going to happen in the next couple of years. Before
we leave the subject of Billy Sharp, I think one or two people are thinking, well, he won't figure as a regular in the Championship. He's 31 now. You know, have we seen his best days? But I think, well, he thinks he's as fitter than he's ever been. He's also got a great record at Championship level. Why should we write him off?
Yeah, I don't think any players are writing him off. I genuinely don't think that. He's deserved every opportunity to play at in the Championship, and as you said, he's already got a proven record in there. Yeah. So with the right strike partner alongside him, Billy Sharp's always going to score goals. If you give him half a dozen chances, he's going to get a couple of goals. Yeah. So that's always going to happen.
Well, let's look at what they might need. I wrote a column just over a week ago suggesting that I thought extreme pace was perhaps what they lacked, and remarking on how they managed to get around that deficiency. Is that what they need, or one of the things that you think they might need, or not?
I think all teams need a little bit of pace in the side. We did lose a bit of it when Matt Donor was taken out the team. Yeah. I think that's one area we will be looking at. Yeah, we've managed to managed is the wrong word, isn't it? We've romped the division, getting 100 points without having any searing pace in the side. But our creativity is more than made up for that. People like Duffy, who are not lightning quick over 50 yards, but over that first 5 yards, I mean, they're very, very sharp indeed. Yeah. And with the ball as well. Flex, another one. Not lightning quick in a foot race, but put the ball at his feet and he will be past you in an instant, you know. Yeah. So there's perhaps a different skill element or skill set that you do need in the Championship, and pace is definitely one of the things.
One of the hardest things to get. We'll talk later about the signings that seem to be on the way. A defender in Enda Stevens from Portsmouth, Ched Evans, of course. We'll talk about that in purely football terms, because that's what it deserves to be talked about, only in football terms. And a winger from Hartlepool, whose name just at this second escapes me, but it's refreshing to see that kind of signing still on the agenda. There are some gems out there, players that get overlooked and can be brought through.
Well, I saw the interview you did with Paul Mitchell on this sofa and was highly impressed with what he had to say. Yeah. And they've got their fingers on the pulse of most of the things that are going on in the Football League. So they will be aware of the good players who are out there. Yeah. And I think we will probably bolster the squad with one or two Championship players, or players who have had experience in the Championship. But we're not going into the Championship or a high league with players who haven't got any experience of it.
Oh,
you know, Coots has been there with Derby, hasn't
Yeah.
he? Freeman's been there with Derby. So Billy Sharp's been there, we just spoke about.
Leon
Clark, Simon Moore, the keeper.
Yeah.
You know, Jack O'Connell has been there with Brentford. They've all had experience of it. So they're not naive, the players. They will be fully confident that they're able to make the step up. And I would hope they'll be given the chance as well.
Okay, I'm sure that's in Chris's mind as well, Chris Wilder's mind. We'll talk about him and the contract and where that might go in a minute. But as promised, let's talk about Sheffield Wednesday in the playoffs. Two enormous games, nearly said that word, enormous games against Huddersfield, starting this Sunday at the John Smith Stadium. Indebted to the boys next door who've helped. We've had conversations with a couple of ex-Wednesday stars today. I may have misled them earlier in the show. The one coming up now is with Neil Mellor. Now, Neil, you'll be familiar with him on TV these days. His dad played for Sheffield Wednesday way back around the time of the Boxing Day massacre, scored one of the goals, actually, the first one in the 4-0 win. And Neil had a season at Hillsborough, scoring 13 goals in that, which in a season that really didn't work out too well for the club as a whole, was a pretty good performance. Anyway, earlier today, I caught up with Neil Mellor. Delighted you could join us. A figure of Sheffield Wednesday's recent history, among other clubs, of course, Liverpool and Preston North End. And I know that you're heavily involved in all things Championship with your work at Sky. Are you enjoying that?
I've been fortunate to stay in the game and get to many games, whether it be in the Premier League, the Championship, whichever division it is. And you know, my real passion is football, and I've been fortunate that with Sky Sports I've been to various games and really enjoyed reporting at various grounds.
And of course, you've seen a fair bit of both Sheffield Wednesday and Huddersfield Town. Your impressions on these two?
Well, I think at the start of the season, many people would have certainly said, fully expect Sheffield Wednesday to be competing in the top 6 places. So there's no real surprise that Wednesday are in the playoffs this season again. But Huddersfield, I think at the start of the season, many people were a little bit unsure how David Wagner would be with his side this season. I don't think many envisaged that they would be competing at the top end of the division. I think it's been a truly fantastic season by them, and they've even had the foot off the pedal a little bit in recent weeks. They haven't been in great form, but they are in the playoffs on merit after a truly fantastic season. Can you split these two? Yeah, I think if you look at the squads, I'm looking at Sheffield Wednesday and saying that I think they're stronger than last season. Failed in the playoff final, didn't turn up in the final, which was very disappointing. I think we'll learn lessons from that. They've been in fantastic form when they needed to be. There's a little bit of pressure coming to the end of the season, and there's a little bit of talk of perhaps Sheffield Wednesday missing out on the playoffs, but they've turned up when it matters. They've got themselves in that playoff position, and if you're looking at all the teams in the playoffs, Wednesday have done the best against Huddersfield. So whilst it's difficult to say we want to be playing them, I don't think they'll be too disappointed to be playing Huddersfield as opposed to the other two sides. Yeah, in form at the right time, whereas Huddersfield have gone off the boil a bit. Wednesday, of course, beat them twice in the league, quite narrow on each occasion. Do you think form going into the playoffs is important? Yeah, I think so. I think form at any stage of the season is important for momentum, for confidence, belief within the group. But when it's the playoffs, it's a completely different pressure. And I just think it'll be a case of who handles that pressure the better. Now, Sheffield Wednesday are a huge football club, and majority of games, there's massive crowds there every single week. So the players are used to that sort of atmosphere, that sort of expectancy. Whereas the other clubs, you just wonder how will they experience the added pressures of the playoffs. I mentioned a little bit earlier, Wednesday, you know, unfortunately missed out in the final last year. But I think that experience will have certainly helped them going into this campaign. Some big players as well, not least Jordan Rhodes, who, you know, you're a striker, you were a striker, you know that goal scorers live on goals. He's only got the 3, although he's contributed to quite a number of the goals. In fact, he's been on the pitch for every goal Sheffield Wednesday have scored since he arrived. Is he due a big goal or two? I really like Jordan. What I like about him is he has the football brain, the movement inside the penalty area. I think the reason why he hasn't scored as many goals, I don't think Sheffield Wednesday commit too many players forward into the penalty area now. If Jordan's one of maybe 2 inside the penalty area, it's a lot easier to mark. If all of a sudden there's 3-4 Sheffield Wednesday players getting into the penalty area, that's when Jordan's at his best, finding that little bit of space, and that's where he gets his goal-scoring opportunities. So I think if there is going to be times where Sheffield Wednesday commit more players into the penalty area, that's when Jordan becomes more of a goal threat. And yeah, but, you know, we've seen him with his record in the Championship previously. He scores goals in big games. So, you know, I fully expect that he will be involved in key moments within the playoffs this season.
And finally, Neil, just how much pleasure is it given to see your former club reviving in the way that they are? Yeah, I mean, I had a season at Sheffield Wednesday and I really enjoyed it. It's a special club, not just to myself, but my family. My dad experienced good times at Sheffield Wednesday, and it's a club that I always look out for, and I want to see them do well. It's, you know, the Wednesday fans are passionate. They turn out in huge numbers, season in, season out, and it would be absolutely fantastic if this season could be the season when they get promoted to the Premier League, because again, they'll be one of the top sides with huge fan numbers next season. So I'm really hoping that this can be the season where they get promoted to the Premier League, but it's difficult. Looking at the 4 teams, it's the playoffs. Who handles that occasion the best? I just think Sheffield Wednesday will have learned from last season a little bit. Neil, many thanks for joining us. A pleasure to talk to you as ever, and hope to see you at one of those playoffs. If not at Wembley, that would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Cheers, Hans.
Cheers, thanks. Real gentleman, Neil Mellor, talking to me earlier today, and another true gent, Nigel Worthington. I'll be discussing the playoffs with him, and also in particular the part and the job that Carlos Carvalhal has done at Hillsborough with Nigel Worthington later, and he's a man who knows, having promoted a team in Norwich City a few years ago to the Premier League. Kevin Gage reflecting on all things Sheffield United with us, and one of the things we just touched on briefly there, I wouldn't have thought an issue. You know, a successful manager is always going to be in demand, and nobody wants to unsettle things at Sheffield United. I don't think there's anything at all to unsettle. But in the real world, a manager with his record, with back-to-back promotions at Northampton and Sheffield United, back-to-back titles, you know, whatever you say, whatever I say, other clubs are going to look at that, aren't they? Even though his heart is here.
Undoubtedly. I mean, there's going to be Premier League chairman and Championship chairman with a lot of money to spend and a lot of investment who will be eyeing Chris Wilder up in the next season. They might be doing it already. Yeah,
I'd be amazed if they're not.
Of course
really.
They are. They're aware of his record, and his record is fantastic. You can't ignore it, can you? No. I don't think he's going anywhere at the moment.
His heart's here.
Of course.
However, you can't take that for granted when it comes to things like contracts, can you?
No, but I think Chris has been working towards this current job he's got at Sheffield United. He's been working for this for 17, 18 years as a manager. Yeah. He's done his apprenticeship, hasn't he, at Alfreton and Halifax, you know, and then he moved to Oxford, Northampton. So he's served his apprenticeship, and he's got his dream job for the moment, but I'm sure he's ambitious, and I'm sure he wants to test himself at the highest level possible.
He's had talks with the hierarchy, who knows about what, but you'd assume about.
Yeah,
with Prince Abdullah, for instance, he's spoken.
He was in Paris apparently, you know, this week, talking about investment and where the club's going. And I'm sure the subject of where Chris is going to be going or staying, hopefully, has come up. Now, I'm not going to spend the Prince's money or Kevin McCabe's money, but yeah, we need to keep Chris Wilder for as long as possible. Yeah, he's a top quality manager, as he's already proved, and we want him to be with us.
I'm sure they'll do the right thing. I mean, on one hand, yeah, he's on contract. He signed a 3 years, so he's got 2 years left. We all know it's about the severance terms. It's usually about a year in every case, but it's also about, you know, 200,000 or thereabouts, if I'm right, for a League One manager. Okay, that's about right. For a Championship manager, it's not.
I have absolutely no idea.
No.
I'm going to leave that in your capable hands.
Leave me with that. I mean, that's what I'm theorising. Yeah. That's around what I think. And I think at least twice that for a manager in the Championship.
I'm sure there's bonuses, there's steps built into that. You know, if we did get promotion this season, which we have, if we got promotion to the Premier League, I'm sure that's covered. Yeah. And you'd like to think that the club would do the right thing anyway, if you know, even if it wasn't.
Yeah, I don't even think it's an issue, but we've got to clear it out of the way, and I'm sure it will, you know, absolutely control and handle itself.
Get Chris on the show. I'm sure he'll tell you.
I'm sure he won't. Even no matter how many pints I buy him afterwards, I'll always buy you as well. 5-minute break. Do rejoin us with Kevin Gage and with Nigel Worthington and James Craig. See you.